Everyone has a story. It may not be glamorous or filled with adventure, but it's theirs. Welcome to Lifting with Larry, the podcast that features the unique stories of everyday passengers from the world of rideshare.
Welcome to Lifting with Larry, What's Your Story? The podcast where I sit down and talk with some of the interesting people that I've met while driving rideshare for Lyft and Uber. My guest today is Jason Thierry. Am I pronouncing that right, Jason?
It's teary, like teary-eyed.
Thierry. Okay, Thierry. You'd think I'd know that by now.
Yeah. Well, you don't say it often, so.
That's true. So Jason Thierry. Jason is a rideshare driver from Grand Rapids, Michigan. He's also the co-host of a couple of podcasts that we'll talk about during the show, and I think he's involved even in some other podcasts. Jason, I like to say he is one of my podcast mentors. He's the one who really kind of got me enthused and interested in starting my own podcast, and as he'll tell you, he peer pressured me into starting my own podcast, which I'm so glad he did because it's been a lot of fun and I've learned a lot and it's just been a joy to do. So Jason, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to finally sit down and talk to you in this kind of realm on your podcast instead of our podcast, because you've been on our rideshare podcast and Threads, so it's been fun to do that, and I'm excited to be on yours.
Exactly. Yeah. I was invited to do both of his podcasts and had a lot of fun doing that. And I'm looking forward to today's podcast, and I'm looking forward to maybe in the future, seeing if I can get Ben and possibly Jesper and Sam on the podcast as well.
Yeah, that'd be sweet. I'm sure they would be happy to do it.
Good deal, man. Okay, so Jason, as I said, you're from Grand Rapids, Michigan. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about your background? Did you grow up in Michigan? Is that where you're from, or did you end up moving there?
Yeah, so I grew up my whole life in Grand Rapids, like a suburb of the city, a town called Jenison. I've got two sisters. One lives in San Diego, one lives in New York, so we kind of spread out. Went to a private high school in Hudsonville, which is right next to Jenison, and then graduated there, went to college for a little bit, wasn't my cup of tea, and been kind of just doing lawn care for my whole life, lawn fertilization and lawn mowing and all kinds of stuff. So I am married with 3 kids, almost 23 this month, whenever this comes out, but in December. Let's see, in December again, I'll have a 12-year-old, and then I have a 9-year-old.
Wow. Okay. So you've still got somewhat little kids. Yeah.
I mean, they can wipe their own butts. So, I mean, I'm happy with that.
That's always nice when they get to that point.
We're out of diapers.
That's a milestone. Definitely a milestone for sure. So you said you've generally done lawn fertilization. How did you end up getting into the rideshare business?
Yeah, I have trouble remembering how I did get into the rideshare business. It's been since 2000. Well, it says 4 years on my account, so it's been a while. I've got about 4,500 rides between the two platforms, and I can't remember how I got into it. It just sounded like something that was right up my alley because I like to drive. I drive for my other business. I mean, obviously I do other things too, like take care of the lawn, but I'm constantly driving to and from. And I was like, I love to drive. This would be a great way to make extra money. And, back in the day, it was real good money.
Right. Yeah. It's very similar to kind of how I got started. I think I've always enjoyed driving. To me, it's really relaxing. I enjoy meeting new people. So it sounded like a really good deal. I don't think I got into it quite as early as you did, but it's funny. You talk about you can't remember that. And I remember you talking about not being able to remember like how you met Ben or how you met Jesper. So it's funny.
It's so true. Ben has been a driver longer than any of us, and I honestly don't know how I met them. Someone knew someone, and then it just kind of trickled down from there. And now it's like, yeah. I mean, I know how I met you through our podcast. That's about it.
Right. Yeah. And then Gabe swears that you like assaulted him trying to get him to drive, but then he said you didn't have a beard, so that's up for debate whether that was really you or not.
Yeah, he said like I stopped him by Founders and said, "Hey man, you should really drive for Lyft," and blah blah blah. And I was like, I don't remember that. I have a terrible memory. It's so like short term. I mean, I can't honestly remember what I did yesterday.
I understand. The older I get, the more I relate to that for sure.
Are you saying I'm old?
No, I'm saying I'm old.
Oh, okay. Just making sure.
Yeah, I got a good 10 years on you, I think.
Yeah, I'm 43, so.
Yes, I'm 53. Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
10 years.
10 exactly.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm one of the old men of the Telegram group, I think.
I don't know if Tom's older than you, but
I'm not sure. He's never said how old he is.
Yeah, we call you Papa Larry, so.
Yeah. Yeah, we have several Papa Larry. We got Rideshare Daddy. I'm not sure what else we got.
That one's weird.
A little bit. So cool. So you got into rideshare driving because you thought it would be fun, good way to earn some extra money. And back in the day, you certainly could make, I think, more money than you can make today.
Oh yeah.
Just because one, the rates that they lowered, and then two, there's just so many more drivers out on the road today than there was when I started, and I'm sure when you started.
Yeah, I think the drivers on the road has been twofold. It's been less money, and then the congestion in GR is just nuts. Like there's just nowhere to drop people off if you're in the city. It's tough. It's tough. But no, the money's not near as good as it was. I mean, I would have $1,000 weekends, and that was just the norm. I mean, not the norm, but I mean, let's say you have a good weekend now, it's $300-400, and back then it was $1,000.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely different. I know when I started here, you could go out, especially if it was on like a early part of the weeknight, and you might see 2 or 3 other drivers on the map. And now it doesn't matter what night it is. Wherever you go, pretty much there's 8, you see the 8 drivers around you wherever you're at.
Yeah. And that's just a fraction of what is actually out there.
Exactly.
Well, I was going to say, I still enjoy driving, even though the amount of money's still there, and it's still good money for what you do. I mean, it's kind of leveled out as a perspective, right? I mean, it used to be $1,000, and that's insane for 14 hours of work or 12 hours of work. But now it's kind of normal, like 6 to 12 hours worth of work. You're making, $200 to $400. And I think that's a fair amount. Would I like to earn more in less time? Of course. But, this is kind of the reality of it.
Yeah, it was a little out there when it first started with the high surge rates that we'd get paid and making, like I said, $1,000, $1,200. Some people were making that in a night. And like I said, for what you're actually doing, driving people, there is a little more than just driving the car. You do have to have some customer service skills that go along with that, but it's not hard work.
No, I mean, there's definitely extra risk of being on the road at those times of the night where it's the most dangerous. But other than actual work, it's pretty easy.
Yeah, definitely. And not only the dangers of driving, being in a wreck, you're also dealing with a lot of, unknown people. You don't know who's getting in your car at any given moment and what their background is and what they might be capable of doing or having in their mind to do. So you're also taking a little bit of risk as
For
far
sure.
as that goes as well. So how did you end up going from doing rideshare? How did you end up getting interested in the podcasting side of things?
So podcasting is always, I feel like I've been listening to podcasts for probably 10 years. And before it was, the thing to do. Now, geez, every celebrity's got one now. It just annoys me. Megan, my wife, laughs so hard because she'll be like, oh, yeah, so-and-so's got a podcast now. I'm like, of course they do. But yeah, I've listened to my start was Joe Rogan. He puts on these 3-hour podcasts, and thankfully, the work that I do in the warmer weather climate is I'm out on a machine for 8 hours a day or in my truck, so I can listen to 2.5 podcasts of Joe Rogan, and I know I'm spoiled with that because I don't listen to him when I'm not doing lawn care because I can't commit to 3 hours. But
right, yeah, his podcasts generally are pretty big commitment.
Right, and some of them are super educational, so you want to pay attention. Yeah, he's got ones where he's got his buddies in, and you could probably just go in and out of it. But when you're wanting to, something super interesting, you want to keep listening to it. You don't want to, take 2 weeks to listen to one episode. So that's kind of how I started out with Rogan, and I just loved it, and I I've always wanted to start one. I just never really had the confidence. Especially, it's really hard to do a podcast by yourself. One of my super heroes in kind of the radio podcasting business is Eric Zane, and he's done with radio now, and he's doing a solo podcast. And yeah, it was rough starting, but now he nails it. I don't know how I could talk for an hour and a half to a camera and not have any feedback.
That would be tough. It really would be tough.
So my first podcast for GR Rideshare was by myself, and I'm sure you've listened to it.
I have listened to episode 1.
Oh, man. And it's funny. I was looking at the stats today, and I think there was like 30 downloads from episode 1 in the month of November. I'm like, you guys are nuts.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. Like, make sure you go and listen to a current one.
Right.
Not just episode 1, right?
Well, it's funny because episode 1 is by myself and the audio is and then episode 2 is with Ben and the audio is worse. I'm like, how did we get worse on the audio? And then it kind of improves from there. But so yeah, that's kind of how I got started in podcasting. I really wanted to do it, and I have gone like off the deep end with podcasting. I currently have the GR Rideshare Adventures, and that's with 3 other people. It's kind of a team. We record every other week, and
and you live stream it as well, which adds a whole nother factor into it.
Yes, we live stream, and the technical part is a little bit more, and it makes you more on point, right? So like your mess ups are live, and your fun times are live, and your swear words are live, and all those things. And unfortunately,
shout out to Sam, right?
Yep, and Jesper. They've both dropped the F-bomb on the podcast. So surprisingly, me, as Larry knows me in the off podcast forum, I kind of have a potty mouth sometimes. And
my money would have been on you, man. I have to say.
See. I mean, I saved it. I've come close. Just because you're just having fun with your friends, and that's why I love the Rideshare podcast. You're just sitting down with a bunch of friends that you have something in common, and you're just ripping on each other, talking about rideshare news, and that's why we kind of label ourselves an infotainment company or podcast, just because, yeah, we provide some information, but we also provide entertainment as well.
Definitely, it's a lot of fun. If any of you have any interest in rideshare whatsoever, I would highly recommend watching a couple episodes of GR Rideshare Adventure. They have a ton of fun, but they also put out some good information. You can learn a lot, and they have some good stories as well. And I love the live part because it allows interaction.
Yes.
It allows people to chat with you, which is how I got to know you guys.
Right.
I don't think if y'all didn't do the live part, I don't think we'd be having this conversation today.
No, I don't think so either. And I really enjoy it. Unfortunately, I've had to back off from interacting with the live comments just because I get too distracted. And now I'm kind of producing the show and the kind of running it. We're all equal as far as hosts, but I mean, I start the articles.
There has to be somebody in control.
Yes, and perfect for me because I'm kind of a control freak. But I've had to back off of the comments, and that's been the worst part because I absolutely love the comments and interacting with new people, and everyone's been pretty cool. We've had a few trolls, but that's fine. That's
going to happen.
Any publicity is good publicity, so I'm okay with a few trolls. But yeah, the live stream is great. Except, Larry, we got copyrighted from our last live stream on Facebook, and they pulled it down.
Really? For what?
I don't know. It was from Junk Something Media. They sent us an email, and I'm like, what is this? And they didn't tell me. I have to investigate further. I can only think is the video where I'm not sure if you watched it, but a small video, which didn't even have any audio, so I don't even know how. Maybe they can track the videos too, but it was the lady that her steering wheel came off while she was driving. So my guess is that's the only viral one that we had, but I don't know. I'm going to fight it with Facebook and them and try to get it back up. It's not the end of the world, but, it just kind of sucks because, that we use those stats to build our, for sponsorships and everything. We show them those video streams, and I don't know. It's never happened before. I mean, I can see music, but I'm like, what the heck?
I was trying to think if there was any music from that episode that I remembered.
And all the music, yeah, that's true. Sometimes it happens where it's playing in the background of a video. And but all the music that we use, like our intro and outro, that's all royalty free. So it definitely couldn't have been that.
So the GR Rideshare Adventure podcast, how many episodes have y'all done so far?
So I think we just finished episode 48. Now, there are more than 48. For a while there, we were doing like a fact check, and we counted that as an episode. But I think there's been 48 actual episodes of the podcast. And if you go to our site, there's probably maybe 60 different ones you can listen to. But we stopped doing that kind of stuff just because, I don't know, we hated doing it. Not that we hated doing it. It's just, I don't know if it was really moving the needle at all. So we're like, all right, we're just going to cut this out. So
I could definitely see the influence from the armchair expert in that part of the podcast.
Yeah, and that's kind of from Ben. And he kind of based Threads, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit, but on Armchair Expert. So yeah, that was, the fact check was from the Armchair Expert. I have to give them credit.
Let's talk a little bit about the Threads podcast. How did that kind of evolve into starting a second podcast?
Yeah, Ben and I, again, Ben is on the Rideshare podcast, just kind of started a friendship, and I was like, I want to podcast more, and I talked to Ben about it, and we met for dinner, and we just kind of created this idea of, being unfiltered. That's our podcast, Threads podcast, Life Unfiltered, just in this world of the Facebook fake and the Instagram and all that stuff. And, we both kind of come at it at a different level. I mean, we're both Christians, but Ben's an ordained minister. He doesn't practice right now, but like he's got more of that kind of background. And so he has some thoughts of being the Facebook fake. And then I have it I kind of came from a broken home, very dysfunctional, abusive. And so I have it at a different perspective on what, people are presenting to themselves or to the public. And I know what happened in my life and how my mom would make us be presented to, quote unquote, the public, to school, to church, but what was going on at home. So that's kind of how we kind of came together. And I thought, Ben and I we're kind of yin and yang. We fight sometimes, we have different views on things, but it kind of all works out in the end.
It does. And I think we've talked about this before, but I think we all agree that that's probably one of the reasons that Threads works so well is that you're not mirror images of each other. You're completely different and you balance each other out in so many ways.
Yeah, I don't think it would work with Ben. I call Ben the free thinker, kind of a dreamer, and that's not a cut. That's just how he is. People are like that, and we need people like that. If him and I were both the same, nothing would get done. And not to say he doesn't do anything, but I'm the one that drives things forward. Like, okay, it's time to do this. Let's do this. And if it was two people like me, we'd fist fight all the time. So I mean, it's just. Exactly. I mean, you gotta have a good mix of personalities to kind of work together. But it does cause, him and I have grown so much in the last year. Threads has been around for a year. We've got like 56 episodes, but man, we've grown so much on how to work better together. And
one of the things that you talk about often on Threads, along with being a peer pressure for starting new podcasts, you also peer pressure people into therapy. Why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, and when I say peer pressure into therapy, it's a loving thing. It's not like we're.
Oh, it's definitely in a good way. It's definitely in a good way.
Right. We're not like, yo, every day you need to go. But it's something that's super important to me. I've been in and out of therapy. Like I said, I had an abusive home, and it's really messed my life up. Like from age 20 to 30, it was an absolute disaster. And I've come a long way, and therapy has been a huge part of that. And one of the things we always say, we use a hashtag, but we always say healthy people go to therapy. So therapy is not just for people that are super broken, but it's for people that need to, you need to maintain your relationships. I would say if you're in a marriage or a long-term relationship, like that, marriage therapy or counseling, however you want to call it, is super important. And one of the things our goal is to destigmatize and it is getting better, but the thought of therapy, like you can be, you can love Jesus and still go to therapy. It's okay. I mean, it's God made those people to help us on earth. So you don't have to feel embarrassed or like you're going to be an outcast if you go to therapy. And we've had one of our guests actually reach out, and he's kind of a acquaintance of mine, said he started therapy. So we were super excited about that. And then about a couple weeks ago, someone emailed us that don't know who she is, listened to our podcast. She lives in New Jersey. And she said that she was looking for some direction because she thinks she needs to talk to somebody. So, I mean, that was huge. That's worth everything. When we got that email, I was just like, just tingly, just knowing that that's what we're trying to do. I mean, not trying to get people to go to therapy. That's not our goal of our podcast, but just open that conversation, especially for dudes, because I think guys struggle admitting that, I'm a little messed up.
Oh yeah, we're we all want to be the macho man. I don't need any help. I can take care of this. I just man up, and I think you've talked about that phrase. Even using that phrase, man up. It gets it points people in the wrong direction and indicates that we should just be able to handle everything.
And you know what? That phrase is fine. I still use it. I used it with my 22-year-old son yesterday in a joking way, but there's times where you just be like, well, this is not a mental health issue. This is like, you need to go to work and get what you need done. And I'm kind of talk out of both sides of my mouth, but there's a time and a place to man up. But when you're dealing with a broken heart or someone passed away or whatever, it's okay for guys to cry. It's okay to say, I don't know how to deal with these emotions, because otherwise, if you don't, it's going to affect your other relationships, like with your wife or your kids, and that's no good either.
Yeah, because I mean, for everybody, life is hard. I mean, it just is. Time, there's going to be ups and downs and hills and valleys, and sometimes life just sucks, and it's hard and it's tough, and we need to be able to admit when we need help.
And it's okay to say life sucks right now. Yes, are there people worse than you? Of course, there are. But in your time, in this time, in 2019, this day, your life sucks right now, maybe, and that's okay. And to talk about it is great. And I encourage anyone. You can reach out to me. You can do it anonymous. We never say anyone's names or anything like that. You can always email us or message us on Facebook, and we'd be happy to try to point you in the right direction, especially if you're local in Grand Rapids, because Ben has a therapist. I do. You're not going to use mine. I'm not giving her up, but I will reach out to her and point you and have her point, depending on the symptoms, point you in the right direction.
And again, mental health is just something that we really need to change our attitude about in this country. I know I grew up with a dad who was bipolar, and he wasn't even, they didn't even know much about it back then. He wasn't even diagnosed for probably 5 or 6 years at least, maybe even longer. And they put him through all sorts of stuff, including shock therapy, trying to figure out what was wrong with him.
Wow.
We have such a stigma with someone who has a mental health problem that we would never have if somebody says, "Oh, I have cancer."
Right.
It's an illness. It's something that you can't, you're not in control of it. You didn't choose it, but yet we look down upon it.
Yeah, what I'm super excited about, as much as I tease the millennials, they've really tried to, and to swing the other way with mental health. And I think a lot of it is the baby boomers, okay, boomer, that's the new thing going around now. And I think that's part of it. My dad and his dad is like, no, you don't do mental health. Like, you just get your S done and go on with life. And I think the millennials are really, it's an encouraging thing. They're saying it's okay. I need a mental health day, and of course, can you abuse everything? Of course, but we covered on Threads a school maybe about 6 months ago that were allowing their students to have a mental health day, and man, you read those comments on those articles, and you're like, seriously, like, why are you being so mean to that? Of course, yes, it can be abused, of course, but I'm so thankful that this younger generation coming up is saying we need this help. It's okay to talk about, and I'm super excited to where that's going to be in the next 20 years. Because let's face it, we need to be nicer to each other. Because man, there's a lot of hate out there.
There certainly is. So on the Threads podcast, you have kind of two different show formats. Sometimes it's you and Ben sitting down and kind of discussing what's been going on in your life over the last couple of weeks. And then other times y'all have guests on the show. Talk about just maybe a couple of the guests, maybe a couple of your favorite guests that you've had, so people can kind of get an idea of what type of guests you have on the show.
Yeah, there's a couple that come to mind. One was my buddy Alex, who ended up reaching out to, or talking to me, and we've hung out and saying that he needs to get some therapy, and I was super excited about that. He has just quite a story. I actually met him rideshare driving. So again, couldn't tell you how I met him, but
somehow you know him.
Somehow I know him, and he's become a friend. He one day we had him on the show after he recovered, but one day he just had a lot of pain and ended up going to the ER. And basically what it boiled down to, his pancreas, I believe, was bleeding into his body somehow. So he was basically poisoning himself, and he almost died. I mean, he was in the hospital for about 6 months. It was like, yeah, you might want to come to say goodbye to Alex. And son of a gun, he pulled through, and he's now a diabetic, but that's really the only effect that changed his life after that. So what a great story. So we had him in, and it was so cool.
Yeah, that was an intense show. I remember that. It was.
And Megan, my wife, after she listened to it, she's like, man, Alex needs to talk to somebody. I'm like, I know. I mean, it was a life-changing event. And so that was really cool to have him on. And then we've had, surprisingly, we've had 2 transgender people on here, and those have been really cool. One was in high school, and one is our friend Gabe, who, he just came on, and I was so happy that he did. I kind of peer pressured him a little bit. I'm like, man, you got to tell your story because you could help so many people. And so I was happy for him to come on, and we have a great relationship with him too. So those are probably two favorite ones that stand out.
Yeah, I listened. I think I've listened to every episode, but I remember those 2, very distinctly. I know you kind of surprised Ben on that show.
Yeah,
with Gabe's news. You already knew about it, but Ben did not. I remember it very distinctly. I was in my kitchen, walking around doing some stuff, and had my phone listening to it, and I remember stopping, and I think I told my wife about it a little later. I was just like, wow, this was just really kind of out of the blue.
Yeah, and it's funny. Ben and I kind of got in an argument afterward because he didn't have he didn't have the reaction I thought he would, and I wasn't trying to. I actually asked Gabe, and Gabe's like, "Nah, let's just do it on the podcast." Like I wanted to give him the opportunity to either tell Ben himself or do it on the podcast. And like Ben and I not argue with him. I was like, "That's it. That's your reaction." Like even after I talked to him for about a week about it, he's like, it's no big deal. And I'm like, well, I know it's no big deal, but I just expected you to have a bigger reaction. I actually felt offended that he didn't react better.
Like, come on, Ben, a little showmanship, man.
Yeah, come on. We're trying to boost these numbers.
Oh, goodness. So not only do you co-host 2 podcasts, I believe you're involved in, is it producing a 3rd podcast now?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah. So, it's in the infancy stage, but we've already recorded 2 interviews. It's called the what's it called? The Dad Up Podcast. Sorry, it's part of an organization, a nonprofit called the Daddy Daughter Organization, or Daddy Daughter Time Organization. Sorry,
and
about
this is
that.
a great organization. When I listened to him when he was on Threads, and I was like, what an awesome idea that he came up with.
Yeah, it's amazing. And basically for $100 a year for one child, you get to go to one event a month with your child. And they're not just these cheesy little events. They're pretty big productions. And it's just spending intentional time with your daughter, which is super important.
And it's only for dads.
Yep. It's only for dads, and it's not a woman hater club by any means, but Todd, if you do listen to that, his name's Todd Chance, and I don't know what episode on Threads he is, but he's divorced and he's remarried now, but his daughter lives in Indiana, I believe, or Indianapolis, and yeah, he struggles with spending time with her because she's so far away, and he just wants to make sure he's super intentional when he has the time. And he's like, what better thing to start? And it's super important. I mean, dad and daughters, yeah, they always fantasize in the media about this beautiful relationship, but it's really, really hard. I have a almost 12-year-old, and it's tough. I mean, it's tough, and you know as well.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, it is very tough. My daughter was probably 6 or 7 when me and her mother got divorced, and as they get older, it gets tougher and tougher to find something to connect with them about. Luckily we found a few things over the years. She was very much into the show Supernatural, and so I started watching it with her, and we really had a lot of good memories watching that show. They have a fan convention that comes to Nashville every year. We've gone, I think the last 4 years we've gone to that. So that's something that we look forward to every year. She started playing Pokemon Go when it came out, so I started playing that. And so me and her played Pokemon Go for a long time. We went to they had Pokemon Go Fest in Chicago. We went to a couple years in a row.
That's dedication, Larry.
You know, I'm not gonna lie. I think I ended up liking the game and being more into it than she was.
Oh man,
that's kind of my personality. I kind of don't do stuff halfway usually. Usually I go all the way.
That's me too.
I know, definitely. I think you're even more so probably than I am.
Well,
I would have to say.
To be a little unfiltered, I have done things that I've stopped. So I've had bees for years. I've just kind of gotten out of it. It's just not that I don't support like honeybees, but it was a lot of work and it took up my backyard. And yeah, I know I'm giving excuses, but I went all in like crazy. And then I bought a drum set, and for a year I took drum lessons and was all in. But I'm like, life got in the way, and podcasting that's what kind of put the drums on the back burner. And I haven't really slowed down with podcasting. I love talking. I love interviewing people. Yeah, is the grind to grow the audience? Is it a grind? Yes. It takes time and patience, and sometimes it's frustrating. But yeah, I have pretty much gone all in on podcasting, and there doesn't look like any end in sight.
Which is great, because I know me and you have a lot of fun talking about different things as far as podcasting, and I haven't dedicated as much time, I know, as you have to it. But I think in the next year that'll probably change. I think I'll probably ramp up my time, just because I think all the kids will be in college starting next fall. And that'll free up a little more of my time for sure.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing you flourish a little more. I know, like I said, you're busy and I'm busy too, and it's just tough to fit it all in. And thankfully, I have the studio in my basement, so I have kind of an advantage of working on stuff anytime I want, which is, well, advantage, disadvantage. But early on in my podcasting career, I had trouble with my marriage because of it, and had to start communicating and saying, hey, is it okay if I go down? Not that I'm asking for permission, but before I would just walk down and start working. And so, yeah, it's been a learning curve with balancing time. But for you, I'm excited. I know you're close to retirement, and yeah, you're young, but you work for the city, so you can probably cash out at 25 years, so which I'm happy for you.
27, and that's if we have any money left, because Kentucky is like the worst funded retirement in the nation, or in the top 3 at least. I think we're number 1 now as far as the least funded.
Hey, quit complaining. You get one from the city. Us poor folk over here have to put our own money in.
Oh, I understand.
But just to wrap that up, I'm excited to see what you can do. I think you're a great podcaster. I think you have the drive. And, man, who knows? We could work on a project in the future.
Yeah, I'm really excited about Podcast Movement, which is a convention. It's the largest podcasting convention in the world right now. And I was lucky enough to be able to go this year. But Jason and I are both going next year, next August, correct? Is it August?
Yeah, August 5 through 9, something like that.
Yeah, I think that's when it is. And this year it's going to be in Dallas, Texas. They move it around every year. Last year it was in Orlando. I'm not sure the other places that they've held it, but this year it's going to be in Dallas, Texas, and we've already got our got our lodging set up. We got our ticket spot. We're ready to go. And it's just going to be a lot of fun. I had a ton of fun last year, but I was there. I didn't know anybody there. And so it's always more fun when you have, you're there with a friend and you can enjoy and experience things and learn things together and just have a blast.
I was going to ask you, did you end up buying the basic ticket like me, or did you buy the fancy one?
Well, the basic ticket, when I bought it at like the last day of the conference,
right,
it includes the recordings.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I bought it like a couple days after you told me about it, and I'm pretty sure I don't know. We don't have to go into it. I was just curious because I know there was a couple different levels that got you into like some VIP parties or whatever.
Yeah, I don't get into any of that stuff, but I think the early bird. I don't think it had a choice of even buying anything that didn't include the recording.
Oh, then maybe I got it too.
I think you did, and you know what? To tell you the truth, I've had it, and as busy as we are, I've probably gone back and listened to maybe 3 or 4.
Right.
It's just hard to find time. As much as you think, I'm going to go back and listen to all these different sessions, it's tough to fit it in.
To me, I would only go back if it was some technical stuff. So I bought that new Zoom, and it's a huge learning curve, and there's not a lot online of how to do things. So I'm a little worried. I haven't set that up yet. I played around.
Well, yes. It's so new.
Yeah, it's so new, and I played around with it a little bit, but I'm like, ooh, man. So I wish there was, as far as the conference goes, is if there was some technical things on, just even if it's basic, like how to improve your audio, I would definitely go back and listen to that. But you're right, we're so busy, I can't spend, 16 hours playing back.
And they do have lots of technical tracks. There'll probably be 3 or 4 at least sessions on different parts of how to improve your audio.
Okay. Cool.
So, yeah, definitely.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah, that'll be a blast. So, tell me, what do you see as the future of GR Rideshare and Threads?
That's a good question. As you know, I would love to be a full-time, I wouldn't say podcaster, but a full-time in the business. I'm actually thinking about going to get an audio certificate because I really like the mixing and the live stream and the producing. I love that. I love to talk too, but I wouldn't care if I was producing a podcast and doing that kind of stuff. So I'm not sure. We're plowing through. We keep going as far as the rideshare. We do have sponsors, so we're always trying to get new sponsors on the show, just to grow that audience. And with Threads, we'd love to do that too, but it's kind of a much more of a broad topic. So it's hard to what am I trying to say? There's a niche with rideshare, like car repair.
It's very focused, like drilled down niche area. So yeah, easier to, I guess, pinpoint sponsors that would go along with that.
Yeah, and we're using cars, which is like our biggest investment. So you got car repair, car body, oil change. We tried to get a cell phone company, not a big one, but one that started in Detroit. Called Gig Mobile, and they didn't bite, but we're going to keep working on trying to do that. And obviously there's some expenses involved with podcasting, not a ton of money, but we'd like to just, have enough money to pay our bills and upgrade our equipment. So I guess that's, that was kind of a long answer of what our goals are, but we're not looking for anything super right now. If it comes our way, it'd be great, but we're just going to keep plowing through and keep recording because we enjoy it.
So you've answered this a little bit, but what do you see kind of as the future of Jason? You said you talked a little bit about possibly getting into the not just necessarily a full-time podcaster, but being in the audio business in general.
Yeah, I mean, of course, my wonderful wife Megan supports me all the way, and I've done lawn fertilization for so long, and that's all I know. In fact, I kind of took a jump last fall. I worked for UPS seasonal, and they said I was doing a great job, and I'm like, oh, look at these benefits and how much I could make $100,000 a year in 6 years, because they're union, of course. And I was like, this is going to be great. And a month in, I had done with the seasonal work. I actually went back to lawn care. So doing lawn fertilization, I was like, I'm comfortable there. I'm babied there. It's so easy. So I kind of went back, and they took me back. Thankfully, they hadn't hired anybody because it's a small company. I'm thankful to God that they hadn't yet. I was a good employee. It's not like it was a hard decision for them, but So yeah, I don't know what I want to do. I would love to do it, but man, what a big change for me. And I don't know. You asked me that. I just don't know. I'm thinking about it. I haven't pulled the trigger on any kind of schooling or anything, but I just don't know what I could do. I don't know. But that's something in the future that I'm thinking about.
Yeah, and it's, I know, again, we're very similar as far as our passion for podcasting, because I know that constantly I have ideas of what, this would make a good podcast.
Yes.
I think of things like I'm listening to, at first I didn't get into too many of the true crime podcasts, but I've listened to a few of them, and I immediately thought like of a few unsolved crimes that have happened here in Bowling Green that would make really, really excellent podcasts.
Yeah.
And my very first guest on my podcast was a guy who was a high school band teacher, and he kind of got fed up with the bureaucracy, and he ended up going down to Nashville and going through an audio engineering school down there. And so immediately I'm like, oh, that sounds pretty cool.
Right.
I'll be retired in about 4 years. That sounds like something I could do.
And I feel like you could. It's probably a 2-year program as far as a degree. So I mean, you could breeze through that.
It's actually, I think, a year. I think it's 6 months. A 6-month audio engineering, and then there's a 6-month track that just covers like every aspect of the music business.
Okay.
And you don't have to do both tracks. Like, you can just do the audio engineering if you want. Although I would probably, if I could afford it and had the time, I think the music business part would be good too, because I think being this close to Nashville, that would open up just a ton of job possibilities, I think.
Right. I think I would do the music end too, because you never know where you're going to fall. And if you have that on your resume, someone might hire you for that. And, maybe it's not exactly what you want to do, but, you can kind of branch out from there.
Get your foot in the door. And you don't know who you're going to network with, who you're going to meet. He was talking about like one of the guys that was in his the music industry class was like this guitarist. He couldn't remember the name of the band, but they were pretty famous. They've been touring the world for like 20 years. And this guy decided he just wanted to know how the rest of the business worked. And so he's doing this, doing this 6-month program.
How smart as an artist to learn that back end, because then no one can BS you. You know what I mean? You're like, no. I know how this works. You're not doing it right.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's one of the things that he talked about. He said one of the things they learned about in the music industry class was, how to not accept the first contract you're offered.
Right.
What's a good contract? How are they trying to screw you over? Because he said it's a very much a cliche, but he said it's very much true. He's like, there's a lot of sleazy people in the music industry.
That's funny you bring that up. I transported a guy that was talking in Grand Rapids, and he worked for Spotify corporate in New York. And we got
really?
It was kind of cool to talk to him. It was a short ride, so I tried to get as much in as I could. But one of the things I talked about was it's so unfair that the artists are not getting paid a ton on Spotify. And he goes, listen, I'm telling you right now, it's the record deal that they made. Because if you have an artist that comes on Spotify that doesn't have a record company, they get paid quite a bit for their plays. And I was like, oh, really? And he's like, yeah, it's these artists that come in that have already got a deal, and the record company takes 90% of it. And because these guys get their money up front, and they don't realize what they're signing and how little they're going to make on the back end. And that's what's happening with Spotify. So then he goes, we're not the evil people. I'm telling you, we want to pay the artists, but the record company is scarfing most of that money.
Sure. And I'm sure it happens all the time, because you get some kid in Nashville who's been trying to break in the business for 10 years, and they finally get seen by the right person, and they offer them a little cash, flash a little cash up front, and then they're going to jump on it for the most part.
Yeah.
And it'd be hard not to, I'm sure.
Yeah. I if anyone's listening, I encourage you, don't do any of that. The internet is amazing. I mean, you can do anything you want. Just don't sign it, or get an attorney.
Yeah. Get a good attorney, a good manager, somebody that you can trust. Somebody that'll give you good advice and not just look out for themselves. All right. So as we get to toward the close of the podcast, I always like to ask a couple of questions that are just kind of unusual questions, not really dealing with your background or anything. So telling something that people seem to misunderstand about you.
Yeah, that one's easy. So people misunderstand about me that I'm an asshole. So Whoops. I probably should have asked if I could say that.
You're good. You're
Okay.
good.
Yeah, I have a big beard and I'm rough and gruff and yeah, I can be an a-hole sometimes, but I really have a soft heart and I'm really emotionally, I'm there as far as like I can connect with people on an emotional level, and I'm very giving and I love to volunteer and those kind of things, but it takes a little bit to get to know me. Even Gabe, our friend, he's like, yeah, Jason's a little rough around the edges, but he's super nice and can have, intelligent and emotional conversations. And one of the things that's been nice is adding Sam to our group. Sam and I are a lot alike, and she brought it up the other night, and it just warmed my heart. She's like, yeah, we're kind of like, we're a little rough around the edges, but, I can't remember what she said, but something about, we're kind of the same. And I was like, oh man, that's why we get along so well. And it's been nice to have her on. But yeah, I would say that's probably what people that think that I'm kind of this a-hole, and I don't get messed a lot in my rideshare business because I kind of like, I'm all business. I'm not jovial, and I'm just like, all right, what's up? Where are you going? And
you smack their hand away when they try to touch your radio.
Hey. How can this come up on this podcast too? This is not fair.
You'll never live it down.
No.
Well, no. I won't bring up the other thing that we always talk about.
Thank you.
We'll leave that for another time.
Thank you.
Oh man, and I have to. I can second what you said. I remember when I first started listening to GR Rideshare and first saw the live stream, and you see this guy. He's got this big beard, and he's a little straightforward, and you're like, but that's why I liked your live stream so much. Is once you start, I got to start interacting with you guys and realized, y'all have been a tremendous help to me, and I'm sure there's tons of other drivers out there, but especially me in starting my podcast. You told me all the sorts of equipment that I needed to get and how to do things, and just saved me a lot of time and trial and error and stuff. And, one of the things that I really enjoyed was being able to come up in the summer for the picnic and getting to meet everybody, everybody that I hear y'all talk about on the Telegram and people that I communicate with on there. But to get to meet them in person, it's just different. It's different than talking through an app for sure.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I really enjoy doing is helping people start. I got one of our Threads listeners, we met with him last week down here in the studio, and he's going to start his podcast. And everyone, not everyone, but people say to me, well, why would you do that? It's competition. I said, there's so many people.
There's plenty of room.
There's plenty of room. I'm doing this for fun and a hobby, so why not encourage someone else? Because guess what? You can be on their podcast and you can grow your show too. It's like everyone helps each other out, and that's one thing I really take joy in is helping other people start a podcast. And yeah, I can imagine it was nice to have somewhat of a resource. Not that I'm an expert, but man, when I started out, it was like, it was so hard to figure out what to buy and everything. And so anytime I can help someone else to start their podcast, and I'm not, there's a ton of ways to skin a cat, but I just tell people the way I do it, but here's some other options.
Yeah, and it's worked great. And again, y'all have been a huge help. You kind of held my feet to the fire a few times when I needed it, because as much as I do go all in on stuff, there are times when I can kind of let things slide for a little bit and pretend that I'm too busy to be doing it.
There's always an excuse not to do stuff.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, that was wonderful. Second question now. If you could go back and talk to yourself when you were maybe 10 years old, what would you tell yourself? What kind of advice would you give yourself?
On a kind of a sad level, I wish I would have, told somebody that I was getting abused. I don't mean to bring down the podcast because it sucked.
Hey, it is what it is.
Yeah, it sucked, and but as far as that goes, I don't know. That's such a good question. I really, when I wasn't at home, I had a great childhood. I played outside. I played wiffle ball outside and football with my friends and stuff. So what would I tell myself? Eat healthy. Because once you put the weight on, it's super hard to take it off.
Yeah, as we're ramping up for our weight loss challenge starting on Monday, correct?
Yep.
Yep. Everybody's been scarfing down all the food they can get to try to get ready to give it all up on Monday.
Yeah. Who do you think? I mean, we're all talking about who's going to win. I haven't yet because I know I'm not going to, but I'm going to try. Who do you think? I think we should have a side pot for the people who is going to get first and second.
I will do my darndest to be either in one of those, first or second.
Yeah.
I'm committing.
Oh, good for you.
I'm going to commit hard for this one.
Yeah. The only thing I've kind of changed in the last couple months is I quit drinking Monster Energy, and I love
that's
that.
huge.
That's huge. But it's it's so delicious. At November 1 I quit, and I'm not kidding you. The first 2 weeks of November were absolutely terrible.
The Monsters, I mean, it's not even so much the sugar and weight loss. It's just they're just so bad for you.
Yeah, they're chock full of chemicals. But you know what? They put something in there that is almost addictive because it really wasn't the caffeine. They taste delicious.
Right. Luckily, that's one thing I never got hooked on.
Oh, good call, man. Good call.
Just as we wrap things up, just want to ask you: is there anything else that you would like to mention or talk about or just tell about?
Yeah, I mean, my only thing I always talk to people about, and we talked about earlier, is just the mental health thing. If you need some help, I mean, yeah, you see it on Facebook. If you post this, someone's listening. I think those are stupid. I'm sorry, but I mean, if you really do need some help, please reach out to us or even Larry. It doesn't matter. I mean, not that we're not the experts, but our goal is to try to help people heal, and one of our goals is, and yeah, if you need anything, please reach out to us. And then as far as our podcast, you can reach us all on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I think Threads is at Threads Podcast, something like that, but you'll find us. It's probably better to go to our website, threadspodcast.com or grrideshareadventures.com.
Yeah, if you're looking for Threads, search for Threads Life Unfiltered. That'll definitely bring it up because there's a couple other threads, I believe.
Yeah, there's a threads about sewing, and so Ben came up with the name, and I kind of let him kind of design this one, and there's nothing against him, but yeah, there is a sewing one called Threads. If you search straight up Threads, it will show up about 6 podcasts down, but yeah, if you search Threads Life Unfiltered, it will be the first one that pops up.
Wonderful. And I just want to second what Jason said about the mental health issues. If anybody is having trouble, get in touch with me. Feel free to send me a message on Instagram, through email. You can go to my website, however. And same thing with Jason. If you go to GR Rideshare Adventures or Threads Podcast to their websites, we may not have any answers for you, but we can at least talk with you, and we can try to help put you in touch with somebody who's got the right answers.
Yep. That's for sure. Well, thank you so much, Larry, for having me on. This has been fun. I feel like we could probably record for 2 hours, maybe 3, but no one wants to listen to the last 2 hours of our podcast.
No doubt, Jason. Again, thank you so much. I appreciate all your help that you've given me over the last, I don't even know when we met exactly, over the last year.
See, it's not just me.
I remember how, I just don't remember when. But yeah, I appreciate all the help, man, and I hope you and your family had a great Thanksgiving weekend, and looking forward to talking to you guys soon.
All right, thanks, Larry.
It's time for the interesting story of the week.
This episode's interesting story of the week happened to me on a Saturday. I got a call to pick up 4 people. It was 2 guys and 2 girls. So I picked them up at a Bob Evans restaurant. Seemed pretty tame, right? And when they get in, though, they seem a little sketchy. Just kind of the way they were acting, the way they were kind of talking to each other, seemed a little weird. So as they're driving to their destination, one of the guys in the back turns to the other 3, and he's like, "Now, y'all going to make sure and stay at home while I go do the thing, right? I got to go do the thing. Y'all going to stay home while I do the thing, right?" And they're like, "Yeah, we'll be at home, man. We'll be waiting for you. Just let us know when you're done." He's like, "All right, because I got to go do the thing." And he was just putting so much emphasis on this thing he was doing. I have no idea what it was, but it didn't sound good. And the whole way, he just keeps repeating it like every 3 or 4 minutes. "All right, y'all going to be home while I'm doing the thing, right?" And he's like real nervous. You know, his eyes are kind of darting around. He's like really erratic, just kind of weird. And then when we drop him off, the weirdest part of all, we pull up to a house and drop him off. And the guy that was talking about doing the thing, when he gets out, he's like, "Hey, man, I'm sorry if I got blood in your car," and walks off. And I'm thinking, what the heck is he talking about? So I pull down the street and get out and look all in the back seat of my car, and I never did find any blood or anything else. And the weirdest part probably of the whole situation is that I picked these people up at about 9:30 on a Saturday morning. It wasn't dark out. It wasn't late at night. It wasn't, a situation where you suspect something weird going on. But 9:30 at a Bob Evans restaurant. I want to thank Jason for being my guest on the podcast this week. And I also want to thank him for just all the help he's been while I was getting my podcast set up. Him and his buddy Ben have been just a great help to me. They've been mentors to me. They've been there for me to bounce questions off, and I really appreciate it. Be sure and check out their podcasts, Threads, Life Unfiltered, and also GR Rideshare Adventures. If you enjoyed this podcast, be sure and subscribe using whatever app you're listening to the podcast on right now. Also, if you could take some time and go to Apple Podcasts and leave a review and a rating, it would help us out a lot. Also, be sure and tell at least one friend about this podcast, somebody that you think would enjoy hearing these stories as well. Thanks so much for listening. As always, God bless and stay safe out there.
Thank you for listening to Lifting with Larry. To subscribe to the podcast, check out other episodes, and keep up to date, head to liftingwithlarry.com.